Let's continue with the last step. I have here everything rotated correctly, -24, -22, -218. The decals I want to hide, and the easiest way here is create a new collection. So right mouse button click. Inside remote, we can call this decals, and then click, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, select those images, and then we drag them into the decals collection, and we turn this off so we don't see it. Because I want to see this inside your Blender file that you did it, because now I'm going to show you how we just use one image and stretch that one image over the whole geometry without using individual decals. And then for future references, it's really up to you to decide which way you want to use. They all have their ups and downs. And let's go. Before I continue, let me go to, yep. So we always need an image that is of a square format. So this is 80 by 80. This is currently in Gravit. If you do this in Illustrator or Photoshop, doesn't matter. You always want to have these images for what we're going to do next be in a rectangular format. Makes life a lot easier. And you can see that I distributed all the images too. Very good. So let's make an excursion to Fusion. So here's a little trick I did. The top surface and the side surface, they have the same color material. They actually do not have the same material. All these top surfaces, which I later want to be able to select in Blender, they have a copy of these materials. So what that means is, take a look at this. There is my matte decal. There's my Roku plastic decal. And what I did was just made a copy, assigned these materials, because when we export this design as OBJ, Fusion creates a geometry where the meshes have already material associations already built in. And in Blender later, I can open this material and I select the geometry that uses this material, and all these buttons will be selected. The only thing I needed to make sure here is that obviously here everything has exactly the same gray value. So between the sides and the top, nothing is different. So that was a little tip to how to do this. Very easy. Let's go to Blender. Okay, so there's our object. Let's move this one up. Can close this. And let's start with the Roku plastic material decal. Then I go into edit mode. AA, deselect everything. Look what happens when I click select. This is selected. See, that's what I meant. AA, select, AA, select. On this dial, I would like to load an image. Which slice is it? One of these slices. One that has the plus stuff. There's slice. I will introduce you now to the UV editor. Think about UV like X and Y, a two-dimensional coordinate system. And let's open that dial. Click open. And textures, there it is. Very good. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. And This geometry is kind of junk. I don't know what Fusion thought it was doing there. It's pointless to work with. So what we will do is here we press U and say unwrap, and pay attention to what happens on the right side. Now there we have the shape. But what the software did, it took the 3D geometry and unwrapped it and made it flat. Think about it, it took kind of like this geometry and then took in a cloth iron and then just made it nice and flat and tried to de-stress it. The positioning here right now is not 100% correct, so you can press A and then press R and 45 and rotate it this way. Very good. I made a small mini mistake. I'm sorry. Instead of slice, we have to use a different image. Not a big deal. There, this one I would like. My fault. So then with G, I move this one and center it. With S, I scale it. And I use these vertical horizontal lines to make them centered on the arrow. There, that looks good. Now we don't see the stuff popping up on the left side. Why not? What we did in the UV editor was establishing a two-dimensional coordinate system. So this 3D mesh we made flat and then put it over this image to tell the software from this image, use this part and display it on the mesh. So the rest we don't see. But our material definition doesn't have anything of this yet. So we need to put that in. So we need a texture. Let's go to Add, Texture, Image, Texture. Here, I think this is called the interface. Yeah, it is. And then we can drag this one to there. Wait a moment. And there. The rotation is actually wrong. So let's fix this first. In edit mode, here we press R 180 degrees. Okay. So this is white that we see, but then we don't see the rest of our base material. So this is blackish. Well, we kind of like replace the base color with what we see there. So this doesn't necessarily work. What I'm going to show you now is, think about it like we use a stencil and a spray can, and then through the stencil we spray color onto a surface. This interface is kind of like our stencil. We use the transparency to spray through the openings, and where we have the rest, we don't spray, or vice versa. Our spray can, in this case now, will be Shift A, color, mix RGB. I can drag this one to there, drag this one to there. Then you see now this color. Look what happens. When I move this stuff, I'm mixing these two colors. Now this is color 1, this is color 2, or 50% of each. What I want is use the transparency, so alpha, to mix color 1 and 2. So I drag alpha into factor. And there we are. To adjust now the size and the positioning, we can go into edit mode, scale this one up or scale this one down. Super easy. To adjust the color of the letters, we can drag around here. So there's a little bit of a setup work with the unwrapping and also in Fusion to add a specific material to the surfaces. But you see, with this process now, if I want to adjust the colors, I don't have to go into Photoshop and make new images. I can simply go in and adjust the colors here. So everything is a little bit of work in 3D, that's a given. But as you can see, this is actually very productive when you want to have certain flexibilities. So how do we do the other buttons? I will select the Roku plastic mat decal this time. Go into edit mode, press AA, deselect everything. Then I click select, and I have all this. So there's an issue again. Fusion Exporter did a crappy job. This button is kind of broken up. So in wireframe mode, again, if you forgot how to go to wireframe mode, it's there, or Z in wireframe mode. I press B, then middle mouse button and drag. And here, middle mouse button and drag. B, left mouse button adds. B, middle mouse button removes from the selection. Very good. And then we press U and unwrap, and you see then all these elements are stitched back together. Very good. And I can select this, press S, scale it down, R90, move this to here, S, and scale it up. And again, I don't see this right now on my object because I don't have this material here yet. So we do the same step, Shift A, mix RGB, and I want the space color, and there, and then Shift A, texture, image, interface, and alpha for the factor. There we are. The rotation is also correct. Very good. So what's going on here? This looks quite interesting. So we have to adjust the position of these other buttons and also their scale. So edit mode. And then I say here, select. There are my other buttons. I will press here B, middle mouse button, or the scroll wheel. No, drag, select. So this is out. And then all this is good, it's just too big. So I select everything at once. The spacing is also perfect. So S and S again. And on the easiest way to hit the right scale is I try to move all the stuff to there and then scale it as a block via S and reposition it till, this is way too small. What did I do? Till all this starts to line up well. What about there? Maybe another scale. Let's take a look from here. Okay. Very good. So you see, doop, 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 doop. They're all set. So AA. And we can select all this. Bring this to there. AA, select all this. Bring this to there. There we are. Now I can move this around. There. Very good. Also, yeah, I will cover this in a second. This is rotated incorrectly, so only with this one selected, R180. Ta-da! And this is too big. We can scale this one, reposition it. There, these buttons are off. So AA, E, make a selection. Also they're flipped, so R180. We can scale them down. center this one there, AA. Press L on this one. That actually selects the whole object. So I could press B and make a selection, or press L on it. G and Y allows me to only move this one up. G and X only move slides at left and right. It's kind of like a two-dimensional coordinate system. So how is the rest? This actually all looks good. A, B, G, and X. Center this a little bit more. Yeah, okay. Can do the same here too. G and X there. So all these letters are fine, but what is going on here? Well, we're mixing kind of like color 1 and color 2 via the transparency. So color 2, that's our mix color. That's not what I want. I want to use, obviously, the color from that image. Zip, there we are. Perfect. So, and then essentially all we have to do now is click save, never forget it. But in terms of texturing, we're done. That's it. All buttons are done. So you see, instead of moving one image onto each button, we just have one image, and then we, inside the UV editor, move the geometry to where I want to capture something from that image, and then in my material definition, make it show up here. This is not, again, unique to Blender. This is just standard UV unwrapping and UV texturing. In Fusion, when we place the decal, it does it actually behind the scene for you. It's just across the board, common among all programs. The advantage of this approach is simply I only deal with one image. I don't deal with additional objects. If I move this around, I don't have to make sure the decals move with it. So it has the advantage of just not having to deal with individual decals. It's at the beginning, it takes more work, but then afterwards it's less work. Now, in comparison to, for example, the base, where I just have this sticker, I would not do the UV unwrapping and putting that on a mesh. Here, I really would just only do this with an image, which I put onto a surface, and then I wrap that image over my body, because this is just the easiest and quickest step to do. So in terms of comparison, when to use which one. Single image, go with this process. If you have more images, then go with the last process I showed. There's also another advantage for how to use this, or why to use this. Let me maybe show this in the last exercise. Let's save one more time. So let's click this. So currently, as you can see, is we have this image. This image we use to give color to a color mixer, and via the alpha, then we fuse this into the material input color. But this is the defining material. So if I say this is not rough and this is reflective, you see also my buttons are, the printed stuff is reflective. Let's say the buttons are actually rubber, and then I, with a nice glossy material, I print these textures on it. The printed surfaces will have a different material. So this trick doesn't work necessarily. And that is why I can also use this alpha, not only to mix colors, but I can mix two materials. So what does this mean? You Let me show you. Shift A. Then we go shader, principal BSTF, and just make a copy. Yeah, we'll move this one up so you can see everything better. Shift A, shader, mix. These two materials I mix. There. Okay, very good. And then the alpha I also use to mix these two materials. So which way was which way? I might have to flip this, I think. Yeah, there we are. This is now the correct thing. So this base color I have to drag into the base color there. So this is now the same thing again. And let's copy these parts to be the same. 0.2. Okay. So let me maybe move to this view. This material defines the texture we see. This material defines everything under the texture. So if I make this now super glossy, you see actually that reflectivity is only on the text or on the icons, but it is not on this material. So I hope that this like basically tells you the capability of this type of a material network. And this is also another reasons why this is a very easy tool to use instead of using individual decals, because I'm only dealing with two materials. And with this, I can define everything, the base material, and then how the printed decals on my product actually should look. Okay, and that's basically it for how to texture the remote control.